What's going on, guys? Welcome back to our bi-weekly seminars. We got like severe thunderstorms literally like right over there, so we don't have very many people joining us live tonight, but I'm sure there's plenty watching online after the fact, Cody. We've been spawning. Fishing's been good. Fishing's been pretty good. I mean, it really has been pretty. I mean, about as steady as you can. It was flat out awesome most of March, and April's been pretty consistently good. To me, it hadn't been quite as good in April as it was in March, but man, it's been pretty solid. And we're kind of getting that time of year now where you don't have to just sight fish for them. There for a while in March, like if you weren't looking at them, like you weren't really catching them. I mean, that was just the reality of it. We can talk about some of the reasons why that was tonight, and because that will relate to how you need to go about trying to fish for them and catch them now. So we're going to talk about what you brought up beforehand, transition from spawn to post spawn, and we've got a lot of post spawn fish in the lake, and how to catch fish in spawning areas, just fishing for them and not looking at them, because that's becoming a deal that you can really get right on these days. And also we'll kind of try to talk about what the next step will be, right? Like what's going to happen, especially if we ever get the water temps warm up a little more. As soon as the water temps start warming up a little bit more, things are going to change fast and in a hurry. And so we'll briefly talk about that, because that may very well happen within the next 2 weeks before we have another one of these. Y'all seen the old infomercial? Y'all remember the guy Billy Mays back in the day that used to have all the infomercials?
Yeah.
But wait, there's more. Yeah. Hey, this is the Billy Mays show right here.
Right.
The Billy Mays show right here. But wait, there's more, folks. We'll tell you another way to catch them in just a minute.
I'll never forget what she called that on your live stream that night.
Yeah, I don't remember who that was that said that, but it's pretty funny. I hadn't forgot it, obviously.
Texas lady fishing angler.
Oh yeah, Brittany Stewart. Yeah.
Brittany, yeah.
So, man, the deal was in March when you had to look at them to catch them, it's like there's so much stuff for these fish to get on in this lake right now. Lake was low all last year, came up this winter pre-spawn period, kind of filled up, and flooded cover that had been growing on the banks for over a year. Some of that cover is just, you can't even get into it and fish it. So a lot of it is right at the water level, and it's perfect, right? And it's perfect to hold fish in and to fish around and all that stuff. But there's so much of it. You're talking about miles and miles and miles of shoreline of flooded cover. Man, that's kind of the deal. When those fish are moving around and they're moving in the spawn, you're already spreading those fish out as they start filtering into those pockets, and then you give them that much cover, it becomes hard to catch them, because it's few and far in between when you're getting bites of fish that really aren't that active. Right before they spawn, guys, they're not real active before they spawn. Like that last little window before they get on a bed, they're really not eating. They eat, they feed up when they're grouped up in pre-spawn period, but when they actually start leaving those grouping areas and start going to make beds and look for beds, they don't really bite that good. And so now you got fish that aren't really wanting to bite in. You got them all spread out with miles of cover to cover. And so if you weren't looking at the ones that were already spawning and actually targeting the fish that were on beds, it was tough, because the other thing that's kind of tough is catching a spawning bass if you're not looking at it. Later in the year when it gets warmer, they'll get a little more aggressive, and you can catch some on accident a little bit better. Like now, you can do that now. Now you can kind of catch spawning bass on accident. But when it's still like 60, 62, 63 degree water, man, those spawning fish are hard to catch unless you're just... Now, if you're on their bed over and over again, you can catch them quick because they haven't got a lot of pressure yet on that bed. So that was kind of just the way it worked out, where you... For a while, for like 3 or 4 weeks out here, if you weren't looking at bedfish, you were struggling. That was for every guide that I know and talk to, all said the same thing. In fact, we kind of mentioned this last night in the live stream, but there's a lot of guys out here that don't like to sight fish or don't believe that it's the best way to do it. They like to fish for staging fish, because a lot of times what we'll have is you'll have some fish spawning and you'll have a lot of fish staging. That's not really how it's worked out this year. Or the staging fish that we do have are real scattered, right, because of the lake situation. And so the guys that are hardcore, stay on the main lake, stay in the main part of the creek, fish the shallow wind blowing points, all that grouping up stuff, those guys, yeah, they're all sight fishing this year.
Yeah.
And they'll talk trash to you in other years about sight fishing, like about, that's cheating, man, that's easy, anybody can do that. You got to be able to catch, if you're a real guide, you'll catch them out here. Well, there ain't no real guides out here this year, because they all back there looking at them, every one of them, so...
Whatever it takes to get the fish in the boat for the customers, yeah. I look at it.
Ask me what my favorite technique to catch bass on is.
Drop shot.
No, ask me, like literally ask me the question.
What is your favorite technique?
The one they bite next. That's it. It don't matter. I'll catch them all. If it's a drop shot, I will throw a drop shot. Now, I will try everything else before I try the drop shot. Mm-hmm. But if I have to, I will.
I know you will. I've seen it tied on your deck.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So now that brings us to where we are now, right? We got, water temps. Man, I really wish they'd get up over 70. That would make things just that much more active. But right now they're hovering 65 to 68 degrees, about what I've been seeing.
Yeah, this morning it was 67.
Yeah, and that's about what they've been staying at. The temps are kind of moving up and down a little bit air temperature-wise, but not enough to really swing that water temp. That water temp, it takes longer to move. And so that water temp's hovering in the mid to upper 60s and just won't quite break that 70 mark and stay there. But it's getting long enough on into it where we've got enough post-spawn fish, fry garters, ones that are just hanging out. See, the deal that we both talked about and kind of thinks going on is there's so much cover up shallow for these fish that typically on a normal year, most of Lake Fork does not have like hydrilla and coontail. It's just got a little bit of like shoreline vegetation, kind of spotty here or there, right? So typically what happens is fish get done spawning, a lot of them, a lot of the big females go back out to those shallow points and feed out there and start grouping up like that. This year, there's so much cover in the shallow water where they're spawning, it's like the fish gets done spawning and goes, I'm just going to sit on that bush right there. You know what I mean? And like she's sitting there, and by the way, there's some threadfin shad, little shad spawning around those bushes, and there's brim all up in them bushes. You see them all the time. She's just sitting on a bush picking off whatever comes by. So these fish aren't really exiting the spawning areas. So now you got post-spawn fish and spawning fish in the same spawning grounds, like in the backs of the pockets, in the middle of the creek arms on the banks, things like that. So you got to think about that when you're fishing for them. And I think the biggest thing to me is you got to understand how that fish is behaving. That fish is sitting still. This is not your typical post-spawn fish that is chasing bait. Now, when the water temps get a little bit warmer, they will start chasing. But right now, they're not actively firing and chasing after really anything. They're sitting in a bush, sitting on a piece of cover, eating whatever comes by because there's so much up there to eat. They don't have to expend that energy. They're not going to. So if they're sitting still, how should we fish? Anybody?
Slow.
My man. When they move, you move. When they don't move, you don't move. So like you've got to cover some water to find them. But then once you get a bite or two, you might want to just hold up now and pick it the heck apart. Like however slow you can fish slower. What do you think? I know you're still sight fishing a lot, but when you're not, we've done so much discussion on sight fishing this year. I kind of like to stay off that tonight a little bit.
Yeah, we'll stay
so when you're not sight fishing, what are you finding?
So kind of like what you're saying, they're getting down in that grass, they're getting on that stump right there by the channel swing,
or just
on the grass edge.
Flooded crap, whatever it is. I don't even know what half of it is. It's just flooded stuff.
So what we've been doing is also we're taking a weightless fluke, weightless Cinco, chunking down that grass edge and just slowly working it back. Another good deal is a drop shot. Honestly, throw that drop shot on the grass edge because you can set it right there and just barely move it and just work it down that grass edge line. Not so much set out here with the grass lines here and you're throwing this way. I'm more coming in on the grass edge line and throwing down it, getting that strike zone longer as you're coming back through. And we're picking up quite a few that way as well with that drop shot.
Man, there's really a lot of baits that you can fish to do this. It's kind of your dealer's choice, right? You can do what you're confident in to some degree, but the main thing is it's got to be something you can fish slow. It's got to be, you got to have one bait that you can fish kind of medium pace so that you can cover a little water and find some, right? But then you got to have something you can fish real slow. And for some people, that's going to be a little Texas rig beaver. For some people, that's going to be a Cinco or a wacky worm, wacky trick worm. For some people, like I know what something we've been throwing when it's low light, little popper, dude, like little yellow magic. That's the best popper made, in my opinion. But that little thing's been the breadwinner first hour of the morning. Or if it's cloudy, like right now, if you could avoid the lightning, you'd go catch some on the yellow magic right now. Yeah. As long as it's low light conditions, cloud cover, you don't even need wind. It can be flat calm and you can catch them on it. But the whole key to that deal when we're fishing that yellow magic is we're fishing it extremely slow. I mean, the twitches are sharp, right? Like they're erratic. We make the bait dance, but like it's like and that's it. And then let it sit for several seconds. Like that's how we're fishing it. It's just the bait's taking forever to go this far, And And that's the key right there on the top water deal for us right now is that, one thing I wanted to get into with you guys tonight is, don't overthink it. Because here's the hard part about it. When you go in there and you start thinking, okay, I got to fish slow. Man, if you land in an area that doesn't got them and you're fishing slow, then you start struggling. And then what I think a lot of people do, especially on a lake like Fork, we all come into it knowing pressured fish, hard to catch, big ones, yeah, but golly, they're tough to catch on this. Like, and that's true. That's all true. So I think what happens a lot is we just overthink things. Like, I really do. Like, if you go back and look at whenever the professionals have been here on the professional tour, I love referring to that and kind of soaking in all the data you can from that, because where else are you going to have that much knowledge of that many guys that are really, really good at fishing your home lake, right? It's just a great database for you to gather some information. And if you look at those tournaments, man, it's nothing complicated. It's not like you got to do some special secret bait or put some special action on it. I mean, like half the catches in those deals, if they were out here right now, half the top 10 would be just flipping a little creature bait in the bushes. That's all, flooded bushes. This is literally what they would be doing. I mean, I've seen them do it out here before when MLF was here that March. The guys that weren't sight fishing were just pitching and flipping and catching them. The key is you can't overthink it and you can't freak out when you don't get bit for a little while. Mm-hmm. When you don't get bit for a little while, you got to just keep moving until you get a bite. And then once you get a couple bites, now we've got, okay, pay attention to exactly where in the creek arm was that fish? Where in the pocket was that fish? Let's see how many I can milk out of this area. Then let's find another area that looks like that. And let's be real efficient with our time because we got to fish slow. But that's it. It's just keeping it simple and not overthinking it. It doesn't have to be it's not like you're going to pull out a square bill or a swim jig or a chatterbait or something like that and all of a sudden you're going to start catching more. That's not what's going to happen. What's going to happen is when you stumble into the right group of fish and you pick it apart, you're going to catch more. Like the right area that's got some fish in it. So if you take that yellow magic out and you go down a whole stretch of bank and you don't get bit for the first 45 minutes, don't panic. Don't even put it down. As long as it's still kind of low light conditions, just keep moving and keep throwing it until you get a bite. And that's what I really wanted to get across to you guys. I think the most important thing in this situation that the lake's in right now, it is post-spawn, it is spring, it's spawn/post-spawn, it's spring. The water temps are in the mid to upper 60s. We've got wind and clouds most days right now, it seems like. That's all. Yeah, right there, right? Like, has anybody heard a negative in that? No. Like, that's all yes. So if you're not catching them, just understand the lake has an immense amount of cover in it right now, and you've just got to stumble into them. That's the deal. And it's not like I can point to a certain type of area because there are fish in those two stages of the spawn from top to bottom and from the back of the creek to the front of the creek. You just have to find the areas they're wanting to be in for whatever reason. It's a little cleaner water. That is something you can key in on. If you can find a little cleaner water, it does seem to help right now.
Big time. Another thing that you can look for while you're in there in these creek arms where all these fish are in this cover, and I know he don't really do this a whole lot, but I do. And coming up, I will be starting to do this. I did it the other day when I didn't have a guide trip, and I did pick off a few, but it's coming. Is fishing the docks in those coves. Those fish are going to start pulling up under those docks. Your shads are going to start spawning under those docks. Your brim are going to be under there. So they'll start setting them in there. Guiding sometimes it's difficult to really fish docks thoroughly because expertise of pitching under docks. Okay,
it depends on your customer.
It depends on the customer.
It's a customer dependent thing there.
So pick apart those docks because that's the start. That'll start any day. I mean, really.
Yeah, I don't. It's not that I'm against fishing docks or that I don't fish docks. I fish docks out here. I don't let docks dictate my decision on where I fish though. I fish. Like, if I'm fishing these pockets and there's docks there, we'll fish those docks in that pocket. Like, if that's a pocket I want to fish, and I think there's some in there, I'll fish the docks in that pocket. If it's, in the wintertime and I'm fishing creek channel swings and there's a dock on a creek channel swing, I'm going to fish that dock on that creek channel swing.
Yeah.
So I'm not against fishing docks or I don't avoid it or anything like that. But I don't let it dictate where I fish. And here's my theory on that. There's so much cover in this lake. To a fish, all a dock is standing timber with shade.
Yeah.
That's all it is. Well, that's all over this lake. Like, that's everywhere. So what I always tell people, and I had a talk with Greg Hackney one time, and he said the same exact thing, which made me feel really good that I was thinking the same way that Greg Hackney does, right? Like that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty cool moment. But he referred to it as you got cake and you got icing, and that is structure and cover. And structure is bottom content, changes in the elevation. Structure is humps, creek channel drop-offs, creek channel swings, points, road beds, pond dams. That's structure. Cover is flooded bushes, grass, timber, docks. Those are cover. And he said, man, if you were having just a plate full of icing, you could eat that for a little bit. You'd be okay for a little while. He goes, if you fish just cover and don't worry about structure, you might catch you a few fish and be okay every once in a while. He goes, but at some point you got to have some cake to go with it, right? Like you're gonna need it to be consistently good. You're gonna have to. So pay attention when you get in a lake that has overwhelming amounts of cover. Ignore the cover. Pick where you want to fish based on the structure of the bottom, and then fish the cover that happens to be there. Because when you get in those lakes, 90% everywhere you go is going to have. When you go out here, 90% everywhere you go is going to have cover of some kind. Right now, especially with all the flooded bushes and stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And right now, picking structure, it's kind of, people may not consider this picking structure, but you're still picking a type of structure. Right now, you're picking spawning areas. Flat pockets, for the most part. Pockets that have some flat banks on them where they can spawn. That's the areas that you're fishing. So stay in those areas, and whatever cover is presented to you, let's fish that.
Excellent said, Hackney.
I would say I stole it from him, but I actually had said it on camera before he said it when I interviewed him one time, and then I was just like, that old big head, because Hackney repeated something I'd said before when I just asked him a question. But I kind of revealed a bait last night that's been real good for me here lately, and it's the old spinning Cinco. Anybody ever know that? You know about the old spinnerbait blade Cinco? You just put a 5-inch stick bait, and I would recommend not using a Yamamoto Cinco for this because they are too soft, and when you put something on the back of it, so what it is it's a Cinco style bait with a blade screwed into the back of it. So you got a 5-inch Cinco, and it's got just a tiny little willow blade about yay long screwed into the back end, and I'm literally just swimming it. Now I will say this, for me, Cody fishes it a little differently than I do, but for me, I want either a very slight, I've got this one hook that I use called a VMC drop dead hook, and it's got a 1/16 ounce rubber belly weight on it. Either that or put a 1/16 ounce tiny little tungsten slip sinker above it and peg it. But I want something near the front of the bait that weighs about a 1/16 of an ounce. If you don't, I like to just swim it, and if you don't have that weight up towards the front of it, it'll ride like this in the water with that little blade and that little weight in the end of it, because it's so light and so weightless, it'll just sink down. The back end will ride funny on you. So for swimming it, I like to have that weight up towards the front, just a 1/16 of an ounce, real lightweight, and just throw it out there and just swim it about like this. I mean, just crawling it, and it'll stay up in the water column because that light bait with a little bit of resistance from that blade will keep it high in the water column. And man, that's a deal right now. Like if you want to find fish, and especially if you want to find fish and the topwater deals quit happening for the day, you can pick that little thing up and just kind of go to covering a little bit of water. Now you're not covering it super fast because you got to reel that thing slow, but you can cover a little bit of water a little more efficiently, and that fishes through any kind of cover you want to fish it through. And when you get around them, like that deal will tell you, they'll tell on themselves with that thing. Like they're going to bite it. At least some little ones, are going to bite it. And if I fish it consistently throughout the day, every day I'll catch anywhere from 3 or 4 up to 6 or 8 bigger fish on it, like good ones, like high end slot big fish. So it will catch big fish too, but I mean it's just a bait that when you get around them, you're going to get bit right now on it. And it's been that way. That's been a bait that I've used in this situation when you got fish that are up shallow but aren't really spawning anymore. I've been using that bait in this situation for 10 plus years, and it's never failed. When you get this exact situation going on, it's money every time.
Does color matter?
I wouldn't go like black. I don't like throwing like a black and blue, but like a green anything. From green pumpkin to watermelon seed to either one of those with some sparkle in it, whatever you're confident in, I think you're going to be good on it. Just rain, man.
About to need my aluminum full hat.
You say you're screwing it into the tail?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. We screw it into the tail. Yeah, and those little blades, those little screwing blades are kind of hard to find. The ones that are kind of a little easier to find. I guess Poche does that some. And of course, what does he fish a lot? Shallow flooded cover, right? So he would be the one to do that. But he's got one that has his face on it. I don't even know who makes it, but it's for sale. Like, you can order that one online. Cody actually rounded them up for us the other day. So a couple weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was like, dude, you know what's about? I say, you know what's happening? I'll tell you what's fixing to happen. This little deal's fixing to happen, and I ain't got not one of them blades. You got any? He's like, oh, I remember you had some, or you knew where there was some around the lake or something.
I had some, but I didn't know where they were because I hadn't used them in a while.
So he dug those up, and then he also ordered some online. Where'd you order the ones you ordered?
Bass Pro.
Bass Pro Shops. So you remember what the brand was?
Bass Pro.
So Bass Pro Shops makes some that you can order.
Yep.
And
Z-Man makes them too. Z-Man makes ones that aren't screw lock. They're, you know how your chatterbait has that little hook on it that keeps your bait? It's like that too, and it'll slide in. And,
oh, don't use that
but
one.
don't use it.
Don't you want the screw? You want the screw, and like that's why I say don't use a Yamamoto because, or any of the real, like the Berkeley General is real soft too.
Mm-hmm.
That just that little extra weight on the tail, when those fish go to shaking their head, it like tears the worm in half and slings the back half of the worm off, and you lose your blade every couple of fish. You know. Yeah.
The older ones I had, I can't remember what brand they were, but the Bass Pro Shop one, the screw lock is a lot wider. And
that's going to hold it better.
It digs in there. I mean, it's hard to get it in there, and it ain't coming out. But you know, he said I work it a little different. How I work it is I still put a little 16th ounce little tungsten weight, and I peg it to where it's snug up against it, and I let it sink.
I thought you were throwing it weightless.
I'm doing both.
Okay.
But I'm letting it sink nose down with that tail as it going down. It's fluttering as it goes down. And then the other way is I'm not using no weight. I'm chunking it out there and letting it fall reverse. And this tail is going down as it goes
And the
down.
little blade, just on that little bitty blade, it doesn't take any water pressure to turn it. So as it falls, it's constantly spinning.
Yeah. And I'm just popping it just like you would a normal Cinco, you know, just kind of.
So he's actually fishing it off the bottom, up and down, and I'm swimming it,
Yeah.
you know. So
Did you fish a shad with a wacky rig?
A what?
Were you
on a
with a
wacky.
wacky rig?
I never thought to do it like that. I mean, you could technically put one on each end if you wanted to do it wacky.
shit, I
It
put
really
it
works.
right
It
in
works good on a Nico rig.
Yeah,
Works good on
I
that.
mean, that's a wacky rig.
I know. It's a Japanese wacky rig.
And if you're going to
So you know what's funny about the Nico rig? Like, I get offended when people say the word Nico rig around me because what a Nico rig is, if you don't know, is basically a little weight that you screw into the head of a trick worm, and you put a wacky hook in the middle of the trick worm. We've been shoving nail weights in the head of a trick worm since I was a kid, man. Like, we've been wacky rigging trick worms and shoving nail weights in there for forever before anybody heard of a Nico rig. So they're like, that's. See, I actually consider, for my whole life, that's been a wacky worm, not a Cinco. A Cinco is not a wacky worm. A Cinco is a Cinco, and a wacky worm is a trick worm with a nail weight in the head and a wacky hook. That's what I've always owned a wacky worm as since I was 12 years old or whatever it was. And so when they came out with this Nico rig and I looked and see what it was, I was like, that's a wacky worm, dude. That's not a Nico rig. What are y'all talking about? Should have patented that deal when I was 15. I'd be a millionaire by now. 15, that's a long time ago there.
Yeah, it is. For you.
All right. Oh, man, let's see. Anybody got any questions or anything? This is usually the part where we turn it over to you and depend on you guys.
Shad spawn still going on pretty good?
Shad spawn's going on fine. And I mean, the big shad, everything's happening with the shad spawn except for bass feeding on them consistently. It's like,
Like I said, they catch crappie out of them. You can't catch
yeah, or sand bass.
Yeah,
I've rolled up
sand
on
bass.
some sand bass on it. But it's just been like a needle in a haystack to find green fish that are feeding on the shad spawn. And the only thing that I can make any sense on that is they're just not leaving the back of those pockets.
Mm-hmm.
They're just not getting out on those clay banks and points that got the shad going on. Because you pull up on like you can do the whole chase the birds thing, and you can find all the shad you want piled up on a bank or a point in the right areas, and you can even run your square bow through there and snag you some shad. Pretty easy to do, honestly. But to catch a bass in there, once in a while, you'll get a couple bites from bass in there. And what normally happens on that deal is, so normally how we start our mornings right now, this is how we start our mornings in most years. We literally launch our boat. And I know a lot of other guys do this too. Launch my boat, and I don't even have a clue where I'm going, except for I'm going to go look at the side the wind's blowing on. And I literally just drive around barely on plane, watching the banks where the wind's blowing and the points where the wind's blowing. And whenever I see birds lined up, I pull in. Because it can change day to day on that deal. They can move around, shatter. Man, they just drift all over the place. You know? And that's usually how I start my days this time of year. You just find 3 or 4 blue herons and you pull in there. And when you see that and pull in there, most years, it's like dump the clutch, dude. Like throw you a swim bait, throw you a swim jig, throw you a square bill, throw you top water. You know, literally, it's so easy to catch them that we literally stay away from the treble hook baits because it's harder to unhook them. And the faster you can throw in there, the faster you can catch more. So we throw like a little weedless swim bait or a chatter bait or, you know, something like that we can unhook real easy just so we can get more cast in. Because it doesn't really matter. I mean, they're usually feeding so good it doesn't matter what you throw.
Yeah, I literally seen 8 blue herons on a point last week. No.
It's been the weirdest deal with the shad spawn this year. It's been super strange. Super strange.
But every time I see it, I do try.
Yeah.
I mean, because you never know when it's going to happen.
And when it happens, yeah, you know, if it ever happens like it usually happens, it's the shad spawn is the most intense crazy. I don't care what anybody says about big swim baits. I don't care what anybody says about a jig, and I preach a jig bite and I love it. Or any other, it doesn't matter, any pattern you want to talk about. There is nothing on earth nearly as chaotic and intense as a good shad spawn bite. Like, it's crazy.
Well, you know, it's not really just this lake either. You know, we had that high school tournament on Cedar Creek 2 weeks ago,
Right.
and I have a video of thousands and thousands of shad on those retaining walls.
Yeah, nothing.
Nothing.
And see, that's normally what you see when you see those shad flick around. You'll see them bass run, bust them. You ain't seeing that at all. Not seeing that at all. And yeah, you're right. It is the same in a lot of places, but a lot of the places are in the same situation. Even though Fort was drawn down as low as it was manually, before it got drawn down, it was already 3 foot low. And so were all the other lakes in the area were low already and had some new shoreline growth happen and then filled up this pre-spawn period. Just they're in the same situation.
Yeah.
Fork was just not as extreme on the depth because Fork got manually pulled down a little extra. But no, the best shad spawn bite that I ever had out here, it lasted for, like, I had this one spot that they would go on every morning. And this deal lasted for 2 to 3 weeks with a shad spawn. It was every single morning I was getting them. It was right about this time of year, late April. And there's one video of it. I did make one of my YouTube videos while this was going on. So this has been within the last 6-7 years. I don't remember when it was. It's been 4 or 5 years ago probably. But we would pull in, and it was just set. Everything was just, you know how it is. Everything just lines up sometimes. Like it's one of them rare times when everything's lined up right. I could pull into the mouth of this cove, right? And my power poles would just barely hold me in the center of the mouth of this cove at the low spot. And down this side I had kind of a straight bank, but there was coontail and hydrill on that bank. And on this side there was a point that had coontail and hydrill on it. And those shad were spawning on that coontail and hydrill every morning. And you could literally cast up and down both sides of the boat. And I'm like, I would pull in there early in the morning, put the power poles down, and I'd sit my guys down and be like, y'all need to do some stretches? Y'all need to loosen up a little bit? Like, I'm just telling, listen, y'all, when you throw that bait out there, you better be ready. And it would, I mean, most of those mornings for 2 or 3 weeks, the first 2 casts that went out there doubled up. I mean, as they throw it out there and get 2 or 3 cranks on the rod, boom, boom. They're like, what the? This dude's the best fishing guide in the world. and the funny part about that deal was, I remember specifically when that was going on, the shad spawn was amazing. And then the rest of the day was just tough, man. It wasn't very many fish left spawning. The ones that were really hard to catch. And so we'd catch 30 or 40 in the first hour. You know, literally catch that many fish in that one spot in the first hour. And then the rest of the day we'd catch like 3. So you get to the end of the day, and, you know, 8 hours later after the shad spawn's done ended, you get to the end of the day and they're like, man, it was tough today. And I'm like, did y'all forget about that first hour when we called 30? They're like, oh, yeah. I mean, it was literally like that. So they start the day thinking I'm the best fishing guy on earth, and they the end of the day thinking this dude sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. Pictures.
I'd rather it go the other way. I'd rather end on a flurry, you know?
Yeah. The only thing I hate about a shad spawn, you know what it is? When I was tournament fishing, is the next day. Them bass would throw them things up in the live well.
Oh, yeah. If you're live well and shad spawn bass, you're going to have some cleanup duty for sure.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
For sure. And you're bad, like you forget stuff in your live well.
Yeah.
Like you let things die in your live well too much.
This is my trash can. I don't tournament fish no more. That's where all the cans
Tell
go.
them what you did the other day, bro. Tell them what you did.
What?
When you snagged a shad. Tell them what you did.
So we were working this fish. I'm not proud of this, but
It's okay, man.
It
It's
is.
okay.
It's
It's not. I'm not mad at you for it.
It was a big fish. And my clients worked this fish for 5 hours. Okay. They're here to catch a big fish. There's a big fish. We're not leaving this fish. Okay. Well,
we're talking like giant.
yeah. So he throws out. One's casting while we're bed fishing, and he's like, "Hey, look! I caught a shad," and he caught it in the tail. And I was like, "Let me have it." I grabbed that thing and I put it in the live well.
Puts it in the live well because he's going to go back to that fish.
Yeah.
The next day, he's going back to that fish.
Yeah. And I was like, if I need it, it's there.
He was going to use that shad on that bed. Is what he was going to do. But then,
like 3 days later,
he ended up not using the shad.
It was bad.
And he had the worst smell of live well in the county.
Yeah. That's horrible.
Yeah.
We didn't
That's what you get for trying to cheat.
It ain't cheating.
It's not illegal.
It's
but,
not
you know.
illegal.
So it's like baseball. You like baseball? It's like an unwritten rule. You can't mean mug the pitcher after you get a home run without getting hit the next time. It's
Like I said in the statement at the beginning of this, whatever it takes to get the customer their fish.
Yeah. Okay.
Whether it's
I've caught
a
some
40 caliber, dynamite, you know.
I'm throwing some on beds like that using shiner.
Yeah.
Little slip cork like fishing for crappie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Little big shiner up in there.
Yeah. That's what he was going to do.
Nail it.
I wasn't letting that fish leave.
I will say this: there was one time, and this was on the video too, and I kind of just did this as a joke for the video, but also because catching fish is fun, bro.
Yeah.
Like it really is. So we were on that little chute on Welsh from Lake of the Pines, where cold water pumps out, and they just go crazy in there.
Yep.
And that year or whatever, that little window, they were really like you'd see them like the shad would come flying out of the water when the bass would run through there, and there were. Even though it was Welsh, there were some big ones running through there. Like every bite we got in there was a big one. And we were throwing swim baits and everything through there. And we were catching a couple, but like it was like they weren't, I don't know if they just had so much real food. We weren't, matching the hatch good enough or whatever, but we weren't really getting very many bites doing this. And one of those guys was throwing a swim bait with a top hook on it, and he snagged a shad about that big. Oh, you know what happened then, dude.
I do.
Yeah, we took that shad and I put him on a hook, and we threw that sucker out there swimming in like a swim bait, like 2 times, and bam, biggest fish of the day.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
Either one of y'all got it at night.
he does.
I do.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, I really
I don't
enjoy
like
it.
night fishing. I've never liked night fishing, but he does.
Coming 2024, I'm going to try something different. I'm going to spawn bedfish at night.
Tonight.
I'm going to try it because I think that'd be the coolest thing. For one, you ain't got no traffic. For two, they ain't expecting it, I don't think. So we going to try it. I'm going to go out next spring and try some night fishing for
I'll be
bedfish.
interesting to see how that works out because I know the males will sit there all night. But females, like there's a deal with bedfish where like early in the morning the females won't be up, but in the afternoon they will.
Yeah.
And that happens. So I'm curious to see when you do that, without the sun being out and being kind of bright and shining and all that stuff and gestating eggs, or whatever, how many of those females will actually show up on a bed at night? Because if they're gone in the morning, sometime between the afternoon and the morning they leave.
Yeah.
So that'd be interesting.
Yeah. I'm just going to try it to see what happens. I've been thinking about that all year this year. So
We've been catching the hell out of bedfish, and you've been trying to figure out how to not do that.
how to do it at night too.
Yeah, how to do it differently.
all day long.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just don't need to ask questions you don't want to answer to. Like, does it get better than this? No. Like, that's the answer.
Yeah. Go home, spend time with your kids.
yeah, right.
That's like catch a couple bass on a bait, and the first thing they do is change the bait and try something different.
All the time, bro. Like, everybody I know does that crap. You get 2 or 3 bites, you're like, well, if they're biting that, surely they'll bite this. And you pick, dude, I do it. Everybody does it. The dumbest thing ever, isn't it?
Yeah.
So dumb. I think we're about to get a tornado, y'all.
Good shit. Oh yeah. I see that. At your house?
No, man, that's like, where's 17 at? Right there? That's Yanis.
Well, that's where we're at.
Yeah, well, no, here's Alba, so. Oh, no, we're good. It's going north of 515.
Yeah, that's going right by my house.
Yeah.
It is going by your house. Like, it's going right to your house here in a minute.
Have y'all ever? I hearing people talking
It's
about
right at
fishing
Lake
the
Fork
docks
right now.
with dock lights on them at night and fishing bass, and I thought
Yeah.
about trying it in the near future, in the next week or two.
Yeah, I used to do that. So there's a lot of underwater green lights. Back back in the day when I night fished, there wasn't really that many of them. So like when you found a few of them, like you found a cove that had a few, it's pretty much lead since pipe. You're gonna bust them on that. Now there's kind of green lights everywhere, and they get fished a lot more than they used to. Cody would have a lot more recent knowledge of that.
All right, so man, really, the green lights are fun, but I actually catch more and bigger fish on the docks that have the security lights overhanging the water. For some reason, I noticed that last year. It still draws up the bait fish, but it don't draw up the gar, the junk, the trash fish that normally kind of keep the bass pushed away during that feeding time.
Yeah, I catch them better on the edges of it. Out off the edges.
And so that's why those security
draw
lights.
the shad stuff. But like I said, you got big hybrids in there. You got gar running. The gar just get in there and set.
Yep.
Just set right in there.
But
We are under a severe thunderstorm warning, in case you want to know. Not a tornado warning.
well, if it's going over the log, it's just gonna miss my house. My house is a little further, about 400 yards.
It's gonna go between us and your house.
Yeah. But no, the security lights have actually been better. And another thing you can try night fishing, I won a lot of night tournaments this way, is boat ramps.
Yeah.
Boat ramps, oh my goodness, with a shaky head.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, one thing I would say if you're interested in night fishing, I don't know how we got on this topic, but from my experience, night fishing is, I think the common accepted knowledge book of night fishing is to throw different type of baits at night. To throw big black worms and big black spinner baits to thump. And one thing I'll tell you is those fish will bite the same baits at night that they'll bite in the daytime. A little regular shaky head with I used to use a grande bass Cinco was my favorite shaky head worm when I was night fishing in those days. And it's a Cinco with a ribbed tail is all it is. It's just a finesse Cinco that has more wiggle in the tail. And I would shaky head that at night and catch all the fish you wanted. And we'd throw that black spinnerbait around and really wouldn't catch them that good. I don't think you have to go the route of the old school thinking of throwing the big vibrating baits and you don't need all that, man. You can just throw a regular bait and they'll eat it.
For sure. There's a truth to that.
Yeah.
So,
And on a lake like this, the reality of this lake is these fish get so much pressure that even when they're not getting as much pressure at night, they're still affected by the pressure they got all day. So you got to be careful throwing baits that they've already seen, or throwing baits they're seeing at night, or throwing baits that are too aggressive. Sometimes it's good to be more aggressive to get a reaction out of them, but it's kind of that's one of the things that makes this lake challenging is the pressure. If you take a pond, right? Like you take just think of it on a small scale. Take a pond, take a 5-acre pond, and it never gets fished, right? It doesn't get fished for 6 months. Man, you go out there, you catch them on anything, dude. Like you catch the biggest fish in the lake on anything you want to catch them on, right? Now you take that same pond that hadn't been fished for 6 months, and you open it to the public for 6 months. Open it to the public for 2 weeks, and there's people constantly fishing it 24 hours a day. If there's just one person fishing a 5-acre pond 24 hours a day for like a few days, those fish instantly get harder to catch. Instantly.
yeah, just like hunting.
And the pressure effect is so real on these fish. So, if you're not fishing, just think about that. Still fishing some of that finessey stuff that works out here at times and all that stuff, that's going to be the way to go at night, too.
And just so my granddaddy, he was a guide out here too. He always told me, whether this is true or not, I don't know because I'm not a freaking crawfish, but they spawn 3 days before and 3 days after a full moon. And they spawn on hard banks, clay banks, rock banks, whatever. So during that time, if you're not fishing on full moon 3 days before, 3 days after, get up on those hard points and throw a Texas rig, crawl, colored, or even a shaky head, and you'll tear them up. You'll catch other species too, like catfish and all that stuff too, but it'll be fun. So
Catfish. Ugh. Can't stand them.
I remember the first trip I took with you. You know what I caught?
Catfish. That's Vic, though. That's your
It
buddy.
was good.
Your buddy you came with, Vic Pearsall. That's the catfish king. That dude catches catfish every time.
Yeah, I'll never forget that day. I gotta tell him the story. All right, because I give you hell about it all the time, and this is where it comes from. So Vic calls me. He's like, "Hey," he's like, "You want to go on a guide trip?"
I'd never met either one of these two guys.
Yeah.
And his buddy Vic had booked the trip with me.
And because his wife got shingles, so she wasn't going. So he called me. He said, "Hey, you want to go on a guide trip?" I said, "Why on earth would I want to go on a guide trip? I live on a lake. I have a boat. I fish every day. I save my money." And he's like, "Man, just come on. It'll be fun." And I was like, "Who's it with?" And he told me, I was like, So that's when I looked him up, and I was like, all right, yeah, I'll go. It'd be cool to learn something. We're supposed to meet at 7. This jackwagon rolls up about 7:30. He gets out of the truck, and I said, "Look, man," I said, "if you can't get here on time, just get here when you can. Yeah, it's all right, man."
Yeah, I probably got out and said, "Boys, am I early?"
I gave this dude shit all day long. Okay, we caught plenty of bass. Don't get me wrong.
Let's get a little western out there, mate.
It is. We caught catfish. We caught a drum, and before we caught bass. Okay, this is the start of the morning. I looked at Vic. I said, "I thought you said he was a bass guy."
We were catching all of it that day, dude.
Yeah.
We pulled back there. I know I think I can barely remember this trip, but I do remember. I think one of the areas we were in was like an area that, like, at that time, I'd never caught anything but a bass in that area, like in that stretch. And we get in there and catch a catfish and a drum in there. I'm like, "Dude, you guys are running my home, man. What are y'all doing? Y'all messing up my stuff."
At the end of that trip, Billy was like, "Hey, man, what's your number?" And I was like, "Why?" And he said, "Because I'm going to holler, we'll go fishing." And I was like, "Whatever." So I gave him my number. What did he do? He called me the next week. He went fishing.
Yeah, was that when we went to Athens?
Yeah. And man, it just went from there.
So that's when I met him, and the deal was I found out about his for if y'all don't know, Cody's a Gold Star brother, right? So, and if you don't know what that means his brother was killed in action and serving in the United States Army in Afghanistan, and so kind of just guide trips are weird. Sometimes you go all day and you don't really talk about anything other than fishing, and sometimes you get on guide trips with people and you make lifelong friends that day.
Yep.
I mean, that's just the way it is with guide trips.
Yep.
And that's hell. That is hell.
That is a severe thunderstorm now.
Yeah, that is hell. So that kind of drew me to him and made me want to take him out again. And because being former Marine Corps combat vet guy myself, that stuff always gets my attention. And that's where it started.
Yeah.
And
Now he's stuck with me for life. So.
yeah, now he tries to do everything the way I do. He tells me I'm his hero all the time.
You are my hero. I tell K-Moo.
Listen, this Joker, man.
Y'all are like a couple.
Yeah, for sure. So, the K-Moo does like the broadcasting for the big bass events out here. What was it you had him say?
So I call
I'm out on a guide trip, and he's telling me to listen to K-Moo, and I turn it on, I'm like, what the hell?
So I caught a good fish that came way in, it was over. And they were talking to me about it, and I said, yeah, I just want to give a shout out, man. If it wasn't for Billy Lawson, I wouldn't have caught this fish. I mean, man, he's the greatest guy. He taught me everything I know, blah, blah, blah. I just want Billy Lawson to know that he is my hero.
All I remember is on the radio, they're like, this shout out to Billy Lawson. Cody says, you're his hero. And I'm like, what the hell? What are you talking about?
It was priceless.
Yeah, it was pretty good. Yeah.
Split the prize with him.
Nah, he never gave me a dime, bro. This Joker won so much money that first year he tournament fished out here. I didn't see a penny of it. Not at all. I can't give a radar a pull up. But
I pulled mine up.
there's hell. Yes, just keep an eye on to make sure we don't need to get downstairs or something.
And it says 1.25 hail, 60-mile-an-hour winds. I mean, nothing bad. I mean, I'd fish in it.
Yeah.
I mean, I already got one truck in the body shop right now.
Yeah, I think mine's out there getting dinged on.
I'll probably have to add my grandpa's truck next.
Y'all got any other questions? No? Well, man, I enjoyed.
I think he was about to ask.
I was just going to say that I have fished previous years and had whatever amount of luck. This year has been very difficult.
Yeah.
And I'm under the hypothesis, I guess I'll say theory, that what you were talking about earlier, all this cover and brush, I'm sort of been going over the last couple of weeks, last Saturday even, I said, I think this is a spawner's market. In other words, that years past there's been 10% of the lake that was a good spawn spot, another 10% that was okay, and you sort of could pick it out. And this year it seems like the whole damn lake is perfect because of all of the flooded cover.
And it's not just perfect for spawning, it's perfect habitat for them to live in.
Yeah.
And the lake has stayed level or rose. So think about all the things that are working in the favor of those fish staying in that pocket. The lake has stayed level or been rising all year. all
Right.
year. It's either rising or level. Well, that's going to push some fish shallow. And then once they get there, if water doesn't fall, that's
Okay.
nothing to drive them out water level wise. Temperature has done nothing but warm and stabilize, warm and stabilize. Nothing to push them back out. It hadn't gotten past the point where the warming pushes them back out. We're in the upper 60s. We got to get into the upper 70s before that's going to, mid to upper 70s, that'll start pushing some back out temperature wise as it rises. So everything has pushed them in. Nothing has pushed them back out. And they have all the habitat they need to all be spread out all over the lake in that shallow cover. And food.
And not be fighting for anything or whatever
Yeah.
because it's a buyer's
They've all got
market
their own
for-
5 bushes, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They've all got 40 acres and a mule sitting up there on the bank for them, you know?
Yeah, well, that's what I've kind of put together in my head, and I'm like, I think all the stuff you've been trying to use for the last 6 weeks, 8 weeks,
Hey.
that you used last year.
There's a whole lot of fishing guides that are learning that lesson the hard way this year. Some of them ain't even learning it. They're just going to the same stuff, and they're getting their butt whipped, and they're saying Lake Fork sucked and population's down. And I can tell you from looking at the spawn, it's the best sight fishing year we've had in years, man, in years. Best sight fishing year. So it ain't nothing to do with the population. The lake is in a completely different situation conditions wise.
Did you see what Bob Shannon put about me and you?
Nuh-uh.
So Bass Champs posted a deal saying that the expert says that Lake Fork's on a downward trend in all this because there's not big fish. I just think Bob said, well, obviously that expert has not been in the boat with Billy or Cody.
A week ago Tuesday, I didn't get to catch it, but I saw the second largest fish I've ever seen.
Oh man, there's been like neither one of us has put a 10-pounder in a boat. I got real close with one, it was for sure. And I've seen a couple others that just weren't, a lot of those bigger fish are that way that you see up on a bed. Like when we're talking about 11, 12, 13 pound fish.
Yeah.
They're just not, most of those aren't just going to go, and count on like one hand how many fish I've seen in my lifetime that are well over 10 pounds that are like locked on a bed. You just don't see
The
them.
guy that was with me had never been on Lake Fork.
Hey, y'all.
Sorry. didn't
Come on through.
interrupt y'all.
You're good.
Y'all having a meeting?
We're doing a little fishing discussion, doing a little seminar here.
The guy that was with me was my retired corporate attorney, and he netted about 30 years ago the Texas state record boat with a friend of his, and I can't remember the guy's name, famous fisherman, and it was 16 pound, 14 pound, whatever. And I told him, look at that fish, and he went, that's a big fish.
Yeah.
And of course I don't normally ask God for help, but I was out there going,
Oh, yeah.
please,
Yeah.
just let me hook this.
Yeah, no, I've been there, brother. I've been there.
You can ask every one of my customers. I do the same ritual.
I'm not proud of it, but I was going I only have it for like 3 minutes. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll let it go.
I do the same thing. You ask them all. I'm superstitious when it comes to that kind of stuff. But
He's superstitious about everything.
like in a tournament, I'm not going to fill my live well till I catch the first fish. I'm not getting the net out till I catch the first fish. And so on a guide trip, I'm going to get my net out till I catch the first fish.
I can't wait till you lose that 12 pounder because you didn't have your net.
You know how quick I am at getting the net? Quick. I'm fast. But anyways,
He is the net man.
I am the net man. But I take this bracelet. You guys, all of them. You'll see it in my videos. I take it off and I flip it around. Every time we get onto a big fish. I don't know.
Oh my gosh. One day he's going to find one that's too big and he's going to forget about the bracelet. Then when he doesn't catch it, he's going to blame it on the bracelet. Yeah.
But, yeah.
Well, next Friday's full moon.
Is it Friday?
I thought it was Wednesday, the 5th.
I don't know.
What's the 5th?
I don't know. Yeah.
It is the Friday. Cinco de Mayo.
There should be, so a week from Monday should be kind of the last real good, like that Monday to Thursday, that week right there should be kind of don't think that a week from tomorrow, next weekend is going to be the great sight fishing day, guys. It's not. They pull in on the moon and it takes a few days for them to get paired up and locked on. It's that 3rd to 6th day, 7th day after. That is the peak of the spawning window as far as catching them goes. So it'll be that, a week from Mondays when that will kind of start, and it'll be probably, whatever comes in on that, that'll probably be the last real significant wave. And whatever comes in on that, that'll be when you catch them. The easiest anyway. What is it, buddy?
They're remaking the move Twister out there.
I know, man. Like, we're kind of distracted because, like, you live here, and, like, you're not scared of it because it comes around you so much, but, like, you also are, like, aware. Like, you gotta pay attention, man, because them things just show up.
Well, I'm wanting to be a true Texan and walk out the door and just look at it.
Not in that hail and that pouring down rain, I'm not. Now, if it was one of those where it wasn't really raining that hard and they had some stuff coming, yeah, then you go look. Yeah. Did you see that deal I posted today, that, like, twisting cloud?
Yeah, I saw that.
Wasn't that crazy looking?
Crazy looking. It's a hole right.
So,
Yeah.
No, I didn't see. I ain't been on Facebook yet.
So I
I
know.
made that one.
One of you said something about going out or something.
Where was that at?
That was at the 515 East boat ramp one morning.
I'll be damned.
Yeah, look at that thing. Isn't that crazy looking?
It is crazy.
Yeah.
So I
There's a
know
big fish right under.
you're. I've watched some of your YouTube deals about moon on the horizon versus moon at foot and all that stuff. So, if you're 3 days after the spawn, do you just start sunrise even if the moon's not going to be on the horizon for?
3 days after the moon.
3 days after fall. So, like, let's say on
So
the 8th.
that's two different things you're talking about there.
Okay.
The spawning cycle versus the staging or feeding cycle
Uh-huh.
is a completely different
Two
deal
different-
than that daily feeding peak times.
Okay.
The daily feeding peak times is throughout the year.
Okay.
When the moon's overhead or underfoot, those are your peak activity hours in nature throughout the year, on
Right.
every day. Some days that's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, some days it's 1 a.m. in the morning.
It changes every day.
Changes every day a little bit.
Right.
Right. That deal applies throughout the year. That's like the peak activity hour. Now, I will say this. Spawning bass, during the peak activity hours, they do tend to lock on a little better. But if I'm 4 or 5 days after a full moon, I'm bed fishing all day. As soon as I can start seeing them, I'm bed fishing. That's the deal. Now, some mornings it's, kind of early. If you're out there real early, you can't see them very good. If it's cloudy, you can't see it. It takes a little while. Like, if it's cloudy, you can still see them, but I will tell you need the sun to get higher. Whereas, like, on a sunny day, when the sun gets, like, right here and gets over the trees, you can start seeing some. On a cloudy day, you got to get to, like, 10 a.m. or so before you really start seeing them good. So, that can change when you start sight fishing on those days. But the as soon as I can start seeing them, when I'm in that 4 or 5 day window after the moon, as soon as I can start seeing them, I'm looking for them. Because I just know that's when they're going to be paired up the best. Now, there may be a certain part of the day that's a little better than the other, but it ain't going to matter because I'm going to be sight fishing all day.
Okay.
The feeding cycle, though, I mean, that's something to kind of, you don't have to live or die by it, right? Like,
Right.
It's just kind of one of them deals, maybe casually keep up with it, or like if you see the moon out, you notice it's overhead, or if you notice it's quartering, just expect it to be a little tougher for a little while until it gets it, because out the sides is your secondary
Right.
activity windows. The quarters, when the moon's at a quarter away from you in any direction, those are the lowest activity levels in nature.
You must have been in the quarter all day today.
Yeah. Some days it feels like that out here for sure. But the only thing I really put into that is, like, if I know when it's going to be overhead or underfoot, like, I kind of want to make sure I'm on my best stuff, or at least check my best stuff during that
Right.
time period. But I don't really honestly pay a whole lot. The deal is I got to go out every day and fish from daylight till the trip's over every day. And I'm trying to keep us on the best stuff I can all day, no matter what. So does that moon cycle really affect how or where I fish? Not really. Not
Okay.
really. But that's just from a guy that's doing it every day. I gotta go fish whether the moon's right or not.
Right.
And I'm trying to keep customers on the best stuff I can, no matter what.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I've been trying to pay attention to that, and so far I've had a little luck with, if it's on the horizon, I seem to be more active than when it's at a quarter.
Yep.
It seems to be like you're...
Yeah, if you actually look up the hours on the sonar tables and you track, like, if you're a nerd like Ozio and you keep a logbook, which I used to do actually. I used to do that.
Well, there's an app for
Fish
it.
weekends, yeah. But if you track your fish, right, like when your fish catches are during the day, and then you go back and look at the sonar tables, you'll be amazed how many times you catch more and bigger fish during that hour on each side, that 2-hour window of the moon being directly overhead.
Speaking of Ozio,
Ozio,
you were making fun of me the other day because of something I wrote.
you said she went down into the grass, never to be seen again. That sounded like an Ozio line I've ever heard.
It's better to say that than the guy don't know how to find a fish.
Hey, she got in some brush and we lost her. Never to be seen again.
Never to be seen again. It's mystic.
Yeah, you be getting some writing lessons from Ozio. We love you, David.
We do.
We do love you.
Jitterbug and all.
Yeah.
Life alert.
Yeah. Polyester bowling pants and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Have y'all ever seen them old videos of Ozio? Y'all know David Ozio? Yeah. Have y'all ever seen his old bowling videos? Like from the 90s and stuff? Dude, he's wearing them, y'all know what I'm talking about, them polyester bowling pants. bro. Like he's wearing those in them videos. Yes, yes, he is. He's not even here to defend himself. I feel kind of bad now.
I don't.
If he was standing right there, it wouldn't feel bad, not one bit.
I'll call him and tell him.
But I kind of feel bad doing it when he.
Actually, we can both call him at the same time again.
Yeah. Ozio called us the other day, just talking fishing with us for a minute. He'd called me and he'd called Cody, and we both missed the call. And Cody had called me, and then this is how it goes after fishing a lot of days. All your guide buddies might want to talk. So I called Cody back, and I was on the phone with Cody, and I told him, I said, I got to get off phone. I got to call Ozio. He's like, I got to call him too. I said, let's call him at the same time. So I just put Cody on hold and called Ozio and merged the call. And I was like, hello? And he's like, hey. And then Cody's like, hello? He's like, yeah, hey, man. I'm like, David, you don't even know what's happening right now. He goes, what? And I'm like, you're talking to two people. He goes, what do you mean I'm talking to two people?
He was confused for like a minute.
we had like a who's on first routine going on. Yeah.
Oh, you gotta love him.
Man, I've had a good time talking tonight, man. This has been fun. Appreciate you guys letting me just sit up here and hang out with my buddy and tell stories and crack jokes. So hopefully we had some helpful information somewhere along the way in there. But
I'm sure we did. If not, they got to see this pretty face.
well, all fishermen are liars. We know that for sure.
Well, the bad thing is these two guys are going to still with him for the next 2 days.
Yeah.
I feel
Oh,
sorry
y'all got
for
him for 2 days? Y'all be ready to return him to the place you got him from about 2 p.m. tomorrow, I bet. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, I think we're between storms, so we might all go ahead and try to get out of here right now, man. Thank you guys for coming.
See y'all.